Welcome Garden Gate Magazine to Trout Lily Farm in North Guilford, Connecticut. I'm Michael Russo, and today I'm going to be using seasonal, locally grown flowers from the garden and show you how to put together an autumnal seasonal inspired arrangement. For those people that like to work with floral foam, you can certainly do your arrangement using floral foam, but today I'm using an alternative, and I'm going to be using this plasticized chicken wire for the mechanical for this arrangement. When you are building an arrangement, the first thing I like to do is select the vessel and have the vessel more or less suggest what color palette I'm going to use and what type of flowers I may use in the arrangement. So I'm using this antiqued urn today. So I'm going to start building this by taking the plasticized chicken wire and sort of forming a pillow. And this is going to hold the materials that I'm using in the arrangement. So I'm just taking it and just sort of compressing this to make a form that's going to go inside the container. And then just for a little additional insurance, I'm going to use the waterproof florist tape, and I'm just going to secure this to the lip of the urn. This is, if any of this tape is showing, it'll eventually be concealed by the arrangement itself. So I'm just going to make a grid with this tape. Also, I like to avoid hitting the exact center because chances are I'll be putting some floral material in there and I don't want to have an obstacle, so I'm going to sort of miss that center area. And I'm just going to quickly get this secured with this. So you can see I've sort of formed like this H form here. Then I'm going to fill this with water. If it's not a waterproof container, you can also take a food storage container, even recycle. I'm big about using recycled materials. So you could take a yogurt container or some other kind of food container and use that and then just nestle that in the center of your container, especially if it's an antique or if it's something you're not sure is waterproof. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start filling the container with some limelight hydrangea, and I use three terms: fillers, thrillers, and spillers. So I'm going to start with the fillers. So I'm using limelight, which is the workhorse hydrangea of Trout Lily Farm, and I'm going to start filling this. And something I want to just let you know about limelight hydrangea is, although this is a very large pendulous type of form, you can very simply change the form of it by snipping out the center of these and making them more of a rounded type of form to use in here. So if you don't have a rounded snowball type hydrangea, but you do have limelight, you have a lot of flexibility. Just make sure that, when you've cut this, that you don't leave any of the cut area exposed, because it will wilt over time in your arrangement. So I'll start filling this, and the chicken wire is going to hold everything in place, and I'm going to hide the rim of the container. I usually work in odd numbers, 3s and 5s, but I just make sure when you harvest, we have the luxury of having a cutting garden, a large cutting garden here at the farm. So I just make sure I have enough material to use. You'll probably have surplus at the end. And that can be used in smaller arrangements that relate to the larger arrangement you made. So here, see, I'm removing a large portion of that, and I'm going to use this to start filling the container. All of these, I use shears and not a knife, a florist knife, and I cut everything at a 45-degree angle, so I have good contact with the water for absorption, and also the stems are not going to be sitting flat. If they were cut flat, they could sit and it would prevent the stems from taking up water. Also, everything was harvested a couple of days ago and has been sitting in water and has had a chance to really condition it and get hydrated as much as possible. I'm also looking at the height of this, and I could probably make this arrangement eventually be about 3 times the height of the container, so I'm going to start building the height now with this. And I tend to do arrangements that are not perfectly symmetrical. I think they're more interesting and more relaxed. And I'm leaving spaces in the arrangement for the thrillers that are going to be coming along soon. So if you look at that, that looks pretty good in terms of the basic filler material. And now what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start developing the height of this arrangement. Because we are in the fall season, I'm going to use some of the dark, moodier tone material. So this is hibiscus foliage that I'm using. It's an annual hibiscus. It's field grown. And I'm going to trim away some of these extra leaves that I don't need. I like when the plants have a particular gesture, and I like working with that. And I'm going to show you some other things I'm going to add to this in these same purple tones. So I have woody material that we're also growing on the farm. This is 9-bark foliage. So I'm going to start stripping some of these off. And again, I like the gesture. Sometimes I take branches and I just gently bend them to have a little bit more of a curve by just bending them on the corner of the table. So I'm going to put those in. Again, I like to work in 3s. This is a little bit too vertical, so again, I'm going to coax this into a little bit more of an arch by just bending it over on the edge of the table gently to give it a little bit more of a curve. You don't want any foliage below the water line, so keep that in mind. And I think for a little unexpected, a little bit of the unexpected, we have red ochre, which helps repeat the color of these purples. So I'm going to cut this. So this is developing the height of the final arrangement. Find a space in your chicken wire. Like that. And also I'm going to work in this some magnolia grandifolia that's produced some seed pods. And because I have this large diagonal happening here, I'm going to want something as a counterbalance, so I'm going to use this magnolia to do that. Because it has these beautiful seed pods, I don't want to conceal those, so I'm going to remove a little bit of this foliage. It's going to pick up some of the brown, showing the change of the limelight hydrangea over time in the garden. So the browns of this are going to be nice companion with the browns in the limelight hydrangea. So I'm going to And again, I'm going to use some of this foliage as a filler. Sometimes it's good to limit or restrict the color palette. It makes the whole arrangement overall more harmonious, I feel. I'm continuing to just add a little bit more of the filler material, so I'm using some more of the magnolia foliage. And then I'll be ready to start adding the thrillers. A couple more. Another unexpected material to use as a filler is perilla, or this red, sometimes it's just called red shiso. It's also aromatic. Again, repeating the color palette of these moody purples and reds. Shiso is also edible, so don't hesitate to introduce vegetables and herbs from your garden into the arrangement itself. So now for my thrillers, I'm going to continue to add some more of the magnolia seed pods, and I have this on a turntable because I want to be able to see it in the round to make sure it's interesting from all sides. I'm going to add a couple more of these. If the arrangement is only going to be viewed, let's say it's on a mantle, or it's only going to be viewed from the front, then you don't have to invest some of the more exotic material towards the back. Again, I'm working in threes, sort of creating triangles in the design. So there you can see I added that. And now what I'm going to add as my thrillers are the divas of the autumn garden, and those are dahlias, which we grow nearly 400 here at Trout Lily Farm. I'm using a dahlia today, one of the dahlias. This is called Contrast. And when you're doing arrangements like this sometimes, use the really showy, you want the showy flowers to extend beyond the arrangement. You don't want to bury them in the arrangement, so you really want them to have be a spotlight for the arrangement. This is also contrast, and you can see on this one there's so many variants in terms of the flower form. So this one's almost all burgundy with just one little splash on that petal of white. I'm going to be working in thirds again. You just see what I've got here. Sometimes the flowers don't want to play well with others, so you have to convince them to get along with the other flowers in here and make sure your cuts are nice and sharp. So just a couple more thrillers, using the dahlias in this case as the focal flower. And then we'll be ready to start adding the spillers. Spin it around so you can see what's happening there. Another thing that's nice to do, I mean, we're working with a living thing, and it's nice to show, I feel it's nice to also show the different stages of growth of the flowers. So these are in full bloom, but also I'm incorporating a bud to show part of the growth of this. And again, something else I'm going to add, maybe unexpected, a sunflower. But instead of introducing a new color like yellow, what I'm doing is I'm taking the sunflower and I've stripped all of the petals off, and I've rubbed away the small flowers maturing in the center, and I'm just revealing the seeds, which have this purple hue, and it's going to be a nice little surprise in this particular arrangement. So I'm going to put that front and center. And it also repeats the form of the dahlias with the rays. So a couple more, I'm going to sneak in a couple more actually I'm going to introduce spillers now. I'm going to repeat the brown of the magnolia leaves by using this particular amaranth called Hot Biscuits. I'm going to put that in. Make sure everything's going into the water. I'm going to spin it around just for a minute. I think I just saw a bee fly by that's also enjoying this arrangement. A lot of times for smaller types of flowers, what I like to do is so that you actually have more of a presence of that flower is I'll group it in an area. So in this case I'm using five stems of the Hot Biscuit, and I'm going to focus that, localize that. So instead of just having little pops of color, you have a little bit more of a concentration of the color there. And another unexpected thriller I'm going to add in there, another vegetable, are these tomatillo pods. These are just the developing cases of the tomatillo, so we don't have the full heavy tomatillo in there, but I'm using the lantern-like pods of that. There's ribbing on there that's purple, so again I'm repeating that purple palette. A little tip. Now that this is really developed, it's difficult to introduce thin-stemmed vines and other floral material in. So little tip and a little trick you might want to try is taking a floral tube, and I take the floral tube and I add the delicate vine material. It has its own water source, and then this way I can just insert that into the arrangement. It's going to have its source of water, and I don't have to worry about whether or not it's actually touching the water or in the floral foam. And another thing I like to do is I like the arrangement to sometimes actually spill over and start to rest on the tabletop even. So this is why this is so long. And I'm adding, this is hops that we grow, and Love in a Puff, which is a fun vine. And again, it's repeating the same kind of lantern form as the tomatillos. So I'm putting them in the floral tube. If the floral tube won't accommodate the stem, just make a little X cut in there, and that way you'll be able to get thicker stemmed material. And just spin it around for a minute, see what that looks like. It adds a little bit of animation having those dangling lanterns like that. Maybe one more. And then just finally repeating not only the cascade of the flowers, but also the color that I've used in the 9-bark. I'm using some purple fountain grass, and I'm going to work with the gesture of this grass, and I'm going to add this to spill out on this end to counterbalance the diagonal of this upper area. Sometimes when I'm trying to figure out the length of the arrangement, I actually sort of bend it into the position, figure out where it's going, I reverse it, I figure out where I'm going to be in space. So I'm going to cut this here because I want it to eventually end up in that area. And then I insert it, and then that way I know where it's going to go in the arrangement. Give it a last look, and just for a little atmosphere and to soften some of the spots in this, I'm adding explosion grass. A few branches of explosion grass there, here. And I think this autumnal arrangement is done, and it's ready for your next soiree.
Hi, I'm Sherry with Garden Gate Magazine. If you enjoyed that video, subscribe to our Garden Gate Magazine YouTube channel. You'll find tips, design ideas, how-to help for gardeners just like you. Be sure to hit the bell so you'll be notified every time we upload a video.